Good morning, Primary 6. It is Monday, the 1st of June, and yet another glorious day, which is wonderful to see. So hope we can all get out and enjoy some of this sunshine, and I hope it lasts. Just having a look through the comments already, I see we've got Karina, we've got Megan, we've got Alyssa, we've got Freddie, Michael, we've got Liam, Eva. Good to see all of you guys. Ailey as well. Good to see you. Today, we're going to mainly be spending most of our time on maths. However, as always, I'm in a new location, and your challenge, this should be quite an easy one today. We've done a few tricky ones. This one should be a little bit easier, but your challenge is to say where we are today. So, can you name the location that I am live streaming from today? And don't say my kitchen. Yes, we know that that's technically true, but where am I supposed to be today? Obviously, we've done a few weird locations. We've in the past we had the Danakil Depression in Ethiopia, which is this weird volcanic, almost desert, which is quite wonderful to see. We've live streamed from the surface of Mars and seen the Earth in the far distance. Where else have we been? We were in the Kjergabolten, I can't remember, the weird boulder in Norway that's wedged between two cliffs. Various other places that we've been as well. Pamukkale, the salt flats in Turkey that looks like it's a frigid, snowy landscape, but actually it's all salt. Today we are at a man-made location. I'm seeing the correct name coming up for most people there. We are at the Colosseum in Rome. The Colosseum in Rome. So, the Colosseum, what was the Colosseum? This is just an extra wee bonus thing here. This is not related to our topic in any way, but this is something that I find quite interesting. I've been doing a little bit of reading about the Colosseum recently, and particularly gladiatorial combat and the stuff that went on with gladiators in the Colosseum. So, Michael, you're saying that people fought in chariots in the Colosseum. I can actually tell you, chariot fighting or chariot racing or any of this stuff didn't happen very often at the Colosseum. They may have sometimes had. They may have involved chariots in some of the gladiatorial fighting, but most of the chariot stuff went on at a separate place called the Circus Maximus, which was a bit more oblong shape. It looked more like a sort of racetrack. The Colosseum was mainly for gladiators. They also had public executions and fun stuff like that going on. But yeah, gladiatorial contests were the main things that went on. They even once, I think, flooded it deliberately so that they could have a mock naval battle with mini ships and that sort of thing fighting each other, which is pretty cool. But the one thing everyone seems to know about gladiators is they fought to the death, didn't they? Gladiators, they always fought to the death. And actually, and you were probably taught this. I know you guys did the Romans in P3, I think it was. But actually, the reality is gladiators very seldom fought to the death. How do we know this? Well, a couple of reasons. One is that sometimes you had posters up in Rome, or there were various advertisements that were done, and they would always make a big deal on the odd occasion where a gladiator fight would be to the death. They would make a big deal, because it did happen sometimes. There were occasionally fights to the death. However, the fact that they had to advertise it when it was one to the death makes it seem as though fighting to the death wasn't usual. There was something a little bit different if gladiators were fighting to the death. So they would make a point of advertising that a little bit more. And we can see that there's normal gladiatorial adverts and billboards and that sort of thing. But then whenever there's one to the death, they make a big deal about it, and it specifically says it. So that tells us that most gladiators didn't actually fight to the death. Another interesting thing, though, is that gladiators were actually very, very valuable, and the owners of them, because a lot of gladiators were slaves, but the owners of them would insure them. Now, why would you be able to insure something that you knew was going to get destroyed? Obviously, I'm talking about people as property here, which makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But that's how the Romans saw them. They saw them as property. They were slaves, or a lot of them were. But you wouldn't insure something that you knew was not going to survive. But the reality is that gladiators were actually insured for the modern day equivalent of tens of thousands of pounds. And that tells us that obviously they weren't expected to die. So basically, gladiatorial fighting was probably a little bit similar to modern day professional wrestling in some ways. So here's an interesting hypothesis, and we don't know this for certain, but here's an idea for you. Roman soldiers, and I know I've spoken to my class about this, but this is interesting for anyone else that might be listening. I think anyway, I find this stuff interesting. Roman soldiers, they would wear helmets, and their helmets wouldn't cover their face. They didn't have they didn't have face coverings on at all, and they were fighting for real. Like they had barbarians and stuff really trying to kill them, like properly trying to stab them with sharp, pointy things in the face, sort of thing. So why would they not need face coverings, and yet gladiators would? Gladiators often had helmets that covered their whole face. Why would that be? Well, it could be because they're very valuable, and maybe soldiers were less valuable. But no, here's another idea, and this is not my idea. This is an idea that I've taken from one of my favourite YouTubers, Lindy Beige, and he probably got it from somewhere else as well. But it's an interesting idea that perhaps often the gladiators were talking to each other, and they didn't want the crowd to see that, but they were actually saying, right, I'm about to go high, and you block it. Ready? Go! Bang! And then because their whole face is covered, you wouldn't actually, the crowd wouldn't be able to hear it, and they wouldn't be able to see their mouths moving, but that way they could make a fight look really, really dynamic and well choreographed and look really impressive, when actually they're doing things that are still dangerous. They're still working with sharp swords, and it still probably went wrong quite often. But they could be much more controlled and do it much safer, which I think is quite cool. So yeah, gladiators probably talking and communicating and staging a lot of their fights, except for the ones that were to the death, because if you're going to fight to the death, you're going to fight hard, and you're going to fight real. But I always thought that was quite interesting. Maybe you don't, but oh, come on. Lindy Beige is great, Alyssa. Give me a break. Lindy Beige is a fantastic YouTuber. I love watching his videos. He had a new one just a couple of days ago about World War... It was either World War I or II. I haven't watched it yet. It's on my viewing list. Anyway, guys, I'm just going to come to our screen here and bring up the Active Inspire view. Oh, I've gone too far. There we go. Right, let me just flip camera views here. There we are. So, it is Monday the 1st of June, as I said already. And we're going to start off with our words of the week. I'm saying starting off. I've already been talking for 9 minutes. I'm wasting far too much time. I'll try and be quick from here. So, words of the week. Word of the week number 1. You're getting 2 for the price of 1 this week, and I've deliberately chosen words of the week that I think might be useful for some of your scene setting this week. So when you're doing some scene setting this week, you might have the opportunity to include some of these words. So, word number 1 is opalescent. Opalescent. Word number 2 is a related word, and actually they're very, very similar. You can almost use them interchangeably. Word number 2 is iridescent. So opalescent and iridescent. Now, what do these words mean? Well, they're kind of for describing a particular look of something when its colours are almost shifting in quite a lustrous, quite an interesting sort of way. So the word opalescent comes from a type of stone called an opal. I think they're fantastically beautiful stones, but when you look at them, the colours on them seem to almost shift. They're almost glittering with colour, and they can be really vibrant. So, what might you describe as opalescent? Have a wee think. One of the things that I was thinking of is the sun, the sky, just when the sun has just set, or is most of the way down, and you suddenly get this vibrant array of colours. You have oranges and purples and pinks and peach and all this stuff, all these colours flaming across the sky. I tend to think of that as being, the sky you might describe there as perhaps being opalescent in a way. Can anyone think of anything else that one might describe as opalescent? Write it in the comments if you can think of anything that comes to mind that one might describe as opalescent. The next word that we're going to look at is iridescent. And it's very similar, to be honest. Both of these are describing things that shift in colour. And you know what? They do basically mean the same thing. It's just kind of sometimes you might want to use one instead of the other. Here are some examples of things that you might describe as iridescent. So often people say that things that look like oil and water has a sort of that's what iridescence is. So you might have seen underneath a car, if some of the oil has leaked and it's a wet day, you might see the oil separating out, and that you would describe as being it would have an iridescent quality. Basically, if you're looking at it and you're seeing the colours shifting or changing in some sort of way, or a sort of rainbow effect, you would describe as iridescent. So you wouldn't describe a rainbow itself as iridescent, even though it has rainbow colours in it, because the colours don't shift. They're fairly static. The red part is the red part, the purple part is the purple part, and so on and so forth. But if the colours appear to shift a little bit, then you would describe it as iridescent. So this snake skin here, you can't really make it out because I think it's predominantly blue, but you can see there's maybe slightly green bits, or you can tell that as you were to look at that, you would see the colours change a little bit. And then bubbles, of course, you often find the colours shift and change as the light hits it from different angles. So that would be an example of iridescent as well. So you're doing a lot of work on scene setting this week, and so you might include words like opalescent and iridescent in some of your work. Today you're doing stuff on similes and metaphors in particular, but going forward you're going to actually plan a full piece of scene setting a little bit down the line. Certainly you're planning it tomorrow and then writing it the day after, and you might include some of this vocabulary. Okay, right, so that is the first part here. The next part, looking very quickly at maths. So your maths task today is based on converting minutes into seconds and seconds into minutes and minutes into hours and hours into minutes and all that sort of stuff. You're basically converting between seconds, minutes and hours. Now, Miss Clydesdale has done a wonderful PowerPoint on that, which is really helpful. I'm definitely going to watch that. That's where all your work is for maths today. However, I was just going to give you a wee pointer for it. So let's say I'm wanting to convert 1 minute into seconds. So 1 minute, how many seconds is that? Just waiting for it to come up in the comments. I'm guessing you've probably typed it out already. It would be 60. So 1 minute is 60 seconds. So 2 minutes then. 2 minutes, what would that be? Well, it's going to be 120 seconds. Okay, 3 minutes, well, that's going to be 180 seconds. and so on and so forth. So to convert between them then, what you're really doing is you're timesing by 60, and that's what's said in the PowerPoint here. Okay, so 1 times 60 is 60, 2 times 60 is 120, 3 times 60 is 180. But you know what? I know some of you are going to freak out at that. Some of you are going to think, I don't know my 60 times table. The 60 times table sounds really hard. Okay, you know your 6 times table. Do that. All right, do that and then multiply it by 10. Or do that and add a 0 at the end. Okay, that's not really what multiplying by 10 is. We've talked about that a lot this year. I know you know that multiplying by 10 means shifting the columns up the way. Or if you're dividing by 10, you shift the columns down the way and so on. I know you get that. But in some cases, you can just tack a 0 on the end as long as there's no decimals involved. So, how would I do this then? What I would be thinking, well, 1 minute, I'm going to times it by 6. 6, then stick a 0 on the end. 60. 2 minutes, times it by 6. 2 times 6, 12. Stick a 0 on the end. 120. 3 minutes, times it by 6. 18. 3 times 6 is 18. Stick a 0 on the end. 180. Much quicker and easier, or, you know, it's less of a cognitive load. There's less work that your brain is having to do. In some cases, if you know your 60 times table, fantastic. But for most of us, it's much easier just to go, multiply by 6. Stick a 0 on the end. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples here for you to try. Let's go straight to 5 minutes. 5 minutes in seconds, please. Get your answers up in the comments so you know that you're going to multiply it by 6 and then tack a 0 on the end. What are we going to get for 5 minutes? Now, I think my chat is a little bit behind. No, there we go. Zach was first up, followed by Jess. Very good, guys. Yeah, that's it. So 5 minutes, we times it by 6, which is 30. And then stick a 0 on the end. 300 seconds. Piece of cake, right? Easy. Okay, let's do 8 minutes. Ooh, getting tricky. Getting tricky. 8 minutes in seconds, please. Times it by 6. Multiply it by 10. What are you going to have? Just waiting for it to come up in the comments. I'm sure it'll be coming up any minute now. I'm still seeing your 300 ones coming up because my chat is a little bit behind you, but I'm hoping by now that you will have come up with the answer. I'm sure one of you will have. And if we're multiplying it by 8, so 6 times 8, 48. Stick a 0 on the end, 480. Okay, so we should get that. And you know what? With hours, it's exactly the same, because how many minutes are there in an hour? Well, there's 60 again. Okay, so you can do this to convert from hours to minutes or from minutes to seconds. Same process. Multiply by 6, then times by 10. What about, though, if I do 3 minutes and 20 seconds? How are we going to do this? Because this is a little bit different, just a little bit different. So you'd be thinking there, well, there's the 3 minutes, so I times that by 6 and then multiply it by 10. But then what do I do with this 20 seconds part? I've got 20 seconds left over. Do I multiply that by 6 as well? No, that would make it 6 times bigger. No, that doesn't make sense. What do I have to do with it? Oh, you add it on to the end, don't you? So 3 minutes. Let's convert the 3 minutes part. So 3 times 6 is 18. Stick a 0 on the end. There we go. But then we have to add the 20 seconds as well. So how much is it in total? 200. Kind of makes sense? So the 3 minutes is 180 plus the 20, 200. So let's try a couple more like that then, a couple of mixed figure ones. So let's go 4 minutes and 35 seconds. So 4 minutes and 35 seconds. So working through this one, Give you just a minute to catch up. Hopefully we've got some of you coming up with it here. So, 4 minutes then. Multiplying it by 6. 4 times 6. Oh, just moving things here. There we go. 4 times 6 is 24. Stick a 0 on the end. Plus, we have an extra 35. So what's that going to be in total? It's going to be 275 seconds. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. Hopefully you're seeing how this works. Let's just do one last one here, where we're doing hours into minutes. Same process, because we know that how many minutes are there in an hour? 60 again. So it should be no different. So very quickly, let's go 7 hours. Oh, I typed that really cool without meaning to there. I accidentally added a super cool Z to it. 7 hours, and let's go 45 mins. 7 hours, 45 minutes. How are we going to do this? Well, you need to know what 7 times 6 is for a start. Well, that's one of the really annoying ones, isn't it? There's a few times tables that I know you hate, and 7 times 6 is one, 7 times 8 is another one. Those are the ones that tend to trip people up quite a lot. 7 times 6, we should know, is 42. Stick a 0 on the end. There we go. Plus 45. So how many minutes would that be in total? Well, we have 465. Hopefully that makes sense. I figure it does. You guys are smart. You know what we're about. You're getting this. I know you are. So from here, let's move on. I'm just going to do 1 or 2 extra little random maths revision questions. So we're on page 11 of this document. We'll just do 2 pages and then we'll sign off for the day. Okay, so Fern, my wife, likes making biscuits. This is a complete jump of topic now, by the way. Just in case you're expecting more stuff about time, this isn't time anymore. This is a completely different thing. You want to know, what I would say is engage your fractions knowledge now. Think about fractions. This is going to come up here, okay? So, Fern likes making biscuits. Here's a list of ingredients to make enough biscuits for 2 people. So if we use 75 grams of butter, 125 grams of flour, and 50 grams of sugar, that'll be enough to make biscuits for 2 people. Let's have a look at what questions we're being asked. Right, so first of all, what fraction of all the ingredients is flour? Okay. Well, we know that the flour takes up 125 grams of the recipe. But what's the rest of it? What's the rest of the recipe? In other words, what number is going to go at the bottom here? Well, we have 75 plus 125. Well, that is 200. Plus 50 is 250. So in other words, the flour is 125 250ths of the recipe. Now, those of you who are in my class, you will be thinking, that fraction sucks. That is a sucky fraction. We hate fractions like that. Really complicated to think about. Splitting things into 250 and then taking 125 of those bits? No, that's just weird. So, we need to simplify it. How are we going to simplify it? Well, we find a times table that has the top and the bottom number in it. Now, I would be thinking, let's jump straight to the 25 times table. That's the way my brain works there. But some of you might be thinking, well, no, I can see that they would both be in the 5 times table. So maybe you divide by 5 first, and then divide by 5 again. Lots of ways of doing it, but try simplifying this fraction just now. Think about the process. Are you going to divide them both by 5? How many 5s are in 125? How many 5s are in 250? Get another fraction, then simplify it again, maybe a couple of different stages, or just count up in 25s. I'm going to do the latter version of that. So, how many 5s are in, how many 25s are in 125? 25, 50, 75, 100, 125. There we go. 5 of them. And how many 5s are in 250? Well, that's 10 of them. So, what this fraction really is 5/10. Ah, well, that's a little bit simpler. but it's not as simple as it could be. So how would we simplify that even more? Well, they're both still in the 5 times table. So how many 5s are in 5? 1. How many 5s are in 10? 2. So it's actually half. What fraction of all the ingredients is flour? Half of the ingredients is flour, because all of the ingredients together makes up 250 grams, and 125 of those are flour. Hopefully that kind of makes sense to you there. I'm seeing a lot of correct answers in the comments there. Just looking at Audrey's comment there, you did 250. It says only 150. You've got me doubting myself now. So no, it would be 200. So the total ingredients is 250, because we have 75 grams of butter. You add that to 125 grams of flour. So 125 plus 75 is 200. And then we add the sugar on top of that, an extra 50 grams. So the total ingredients is 250. And then of that, half of it, 125 of it, was flour. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Okay, the last question here then is what ratio... Oh, sorry, we've not actually done ratio. We've not done ratio. I'm going to change this question just now, although we probably could do this as a wee challenge. What is the ratio of butter to sugar? I'm going to leave that one just now, because I'm not... you know what? Ratio is something we should probably cover. We'll try and do that in the next few weeks. Instead, I'm going to say how much sugar would she need for 3 people? Okay, so you know that at the moment she has enough ingredients for 2 people. So 50 grams of sugar will be enough sugar for 2 people. We want a third person though. We want to, let's say oh, I've just clicked out of that now. That's annoying. Let's try and bring that back. There we go. So we need to know how much we would need for an extra person, a third person. So to start with, what I would do is I would take our 50 grams of sugar, and we know that's enough for 2 people. Let's figure out how much you would need for 1 person then. Let's scale it down the way first. So how much would we need for 1 person? Well, if 50 is enough for 2, we're going to have to divide it by 2, and then we get enough for 1. So how much would 1 person need? 25 grams of sugar. So 1 person needs 25 grams of sugar. Hopefully you can see why that is. If 50 is enough for 2 people, then 25 would be enough for 1 person. Because we now know what 1 person needs, we can now scale it back up. So we do, there's 1 person, there's another, and there's a third. So we can now take that 25 and multiply it by 3, and that will tell us how much we'll need for 3 people. In total then, it's going to be 75 grams. So we half it to work out 1 person, then multiply it by 3 to get 3 people. Let's have a quick look at what the next question is. Oh, you know what? It was exactly that. We'll not worry about that then. We've basically done it. Well, you know what? No, let's do it. Now she wants enough to make it for 6 people. This in some ways is a little bit easier. How much sugar will she need? Will spelt wrong there. Will she need for 6 people? So 50 grams is enough for 2. 50 grams is enough for 2. We need enough for 4, and then enough for 6. So 50 plus another 50 plus another 50. Hopefully you're seeing how this works. So 2 people equals 50. 4 people would be 100. And 6 people would then have to be another 50 150. So that's how we work out the different quantities there. Okay, guys. I think we're going to leave it there just now. So we've touched a little bit on time, and I've covered a slightly easier method or a shorthand method for you working out or converting minutes into seconds and hours into minutes. We've also covered a little bit about fractions here and quantities and all that sort of thing. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the comments, but I've realised that they've fallen behind where I am at the moment. I don't know why that happens. Slightly confusing. Anyway, I'm going to stop the live stream there. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Anyone in my class that wants to have a meetup to talk about any of our work, anything that's confusing us, even any of these questions that you got wrong and you don't know why you got it wrong, if there's anything that's tripped you up, come along to the live stream and we'll just have a wee chat and a wee catch up there. Yes, you have got math today, Eva. Miss Clydesdale should have now posted it. So math has now been posted. It should be in each of your groups. Okay. Right. See any of you that are able to make it along in the live stream, in the Teams chat later on. Take care, guys. 11 o'clock. Bye for now.